Hey guys, so right in the middle of filming today, my producer Justin Fu asked me, what do I think about taking some hot take questions? And I thought it would be a good idea because it's going to make me think on the spot. And I guess there's two trending topics, so let's get right into it.
Bobby, what do you think about doing some hot takes? Like, there's some stuff happening right now, and I was curious to get your thoughts on it.
Let's do it, man.
So, the first hot take is ecological jiu-jitsu. You know a lot about it, or a little bit about it?
Only until right now you told me no, never even heard of it. I thought it was like they don't have lights or something. I didn't know that there was actually like a strategy of jiu-jitsu, but yeah, keep going, please.
What do you think? Is that a cool, good way to learn jiu-jitsu, or?
First thing that comes to mind is that might work if everyone already knows what they're doing. I think that there's two or three answers to this, but the first one is if you want to have a gym that just does ecological jiu-jitsu, you're not going to have a gym. You're not going to have any new people in your academy because they're all just going to get beat up all the time, and they're going to get hurt on top of that. That's like number one. So if you want a real academy with a real business, don't do that. It sounds like horrible, but again, the way I understand it anyway, seems to be that way. It's not going to have a gym. The second piece is, I think that situational sparring is perfect. And matter of fact, I learned this from Roger Gracie when I was training with him in London many different times, but in his classes and with him getting my ass kicked. But he always started out the comp class by side control. And so, of course, we did our warm-ups, which was always a really good warm-up, got a good sweat. But then it was like he put 5 minutes on the clock, and it was like, you're in side control, pick a partner. And then the whole time you had to just escape, and then you switch, and then switch partners, and switch. And it was like the first half an hour was like side control. And I'm not saying my side control is world class, but it definitely helped me. And so then he would teach a technique for the class, and then we would start from that position in positional training. But he would teach the technique first. So the point is, I think that of all the competition classes I've ever taken in my life, in different academies around the world, even Alliance, I really find a lot of value in situational sparring because let's say you're really horrible at jiu-jitsu and you're a blue belt or a purple belt or whatever belt, it doesn't really matter. But let's just say you're not that good and you cannot get to these places that you've learned moves in. So for example, if you learned how to do a back choke, but in class, but you've never been able to take anyone's back in sparring, you don't know how to practice it. So you can only practice it when they drill it in the class. So the cool thing about situational sparring is that if you do back, for example, that day, one person starts in the person's back and you have, lapel or you have seatbelt grip. It allows you to work from a position you normally wouldn't get to work from. Conversely, if you're really good at jiu-jitsu, you likely don't have people taking your back all the time. And so you don't really know necessarily, or you're not as sharp as defending it. And so it's nice to, I would say, from an advanced person's perspective, to be put in bad spots. That's the idea behind it, right? And so you cannot hone your skills if you're always in your best spots. And so that's the great thing about situational sparring is if you're good and people are not likely, if you're the best person in the gym, that's the only way you should be training actually. And that's, matter of fact, Roger, again, back to Roger Gracie, that's what he had shared with me. When he was winning the world championships, he had like just a handful of training partners and they were like blue and purple and brown belts, and he was using them to prepare for the world championships and winning all the time, right? So I think that it just goes to show that the only way he was able to train with those folks that he was way better than was situational sparring. Another person who shared that with me actually is JT Torres, one of my favorite instructors of all time. When he won ADCC the first time, he told me that he only had one blue belt and one purple belt to train with because he had just moved to New York to open his own academy, which is, I believe, Essential Jiu-Jitsu, still is. And he just had those two students to train with. And he won ADCC that year. I think it was, don't quote me, but I think 2019, his first time, then he won it again in 2021. So, and in that time period, he built his academy, had more people to train with, but that's the point, right? And so he was able to train with just 2 people that are way below his level, but through situational sparring. So
Okay, next hot take.
let's go.
The UFC BJJ.
Mhm.
Obviously, Dana White, huge promotion. Competition started and ended. There's 2 sides of the aisle. One part of the BJJ industry says it's awesome. UFC put us on the map. This is great for our academies, our schools, our industry. Other side of the aisle, this is not good. Locking away athletes in a contract. They can't go compete now at ADCC, AIGA, all these other things, and it's gonna kill the industry.
Yeah, I think, my first initial gut reaction when I heard Mikey Musumeci had signed with the UFC, I think he was the first one. I was happy to see that athletes are getting paid. I think jiu-jitsu has a tendency, in my view, which we're trying to change. I'm trying to change, along with Fabio Gurgel, my partner, and all of Alliance, is we want to change the way that jiu-jitsu treats its athletes and its practitioners, in the sense that there's actually a path to make real money, instead of the standard, which is most professors don't really make that good of a living unless they have some crazy private schedule, which is not easy to do. So I think the nuance is back to the question of, is this good? Is the UFC BJJ league good for jiu-jitsu? I would say probably not, but I think it's a good step in the right direction in terms of athletes making money. But I don't like the idea of them being limited to that promotion, just because it reminds me a lot of boxing. Boxing, if you're, with Bob Arum, who's like a legendary promoter who promoted, Ali and Manny Pacquiao, and was one time Floyd Mayweather's promoter before he bought himself out. Promoters only worked with each other if they liked each other, and so you never really saw the best fight the best. And I think that that's something where this could go, is that you won't see the best fight the best, because if you are only limited to people in UFC, then you're not really fighting the best people, unless they literally got every single person into the UFC BJJ circuit, which maybe that's the goal. I don't know. Dana White seems like a smart guy. I like what he's done with the UFC. I'm a huge fan. I think it's only helped jiu-jitsu, obviously, with Royce Gracie winning the very first UFC, and I think the second, maybe even the third too. But they put jiu-jitsu on the map, and I think that it's funny because all the stories that I hear from even Gordon Ryan and some other guys that I really like their jiu-jitsu, when I talk to them, they got inspired by the UFC to train jiu-jitsu, because it was like, hey, this guy in a kimono or in a gi is like beating everybody up, but he's not even throwing punches really. A couple here and there, but he's choking people out and they don't know what to do. And so in a roundabout way, I think jiu-jitsu owes the UFC for its explosion in some ways, to be honest with you. But I think as a promotion, just to like segregate out like people who are like more money hungry, which I understand, and they want to be in a promotion, you're not going to see people fight the best at the end of the day. And I think that will be a very long time of that being the case, unless the UFC just starts handing out tons of money for everybody to join. So I think that's likely not the case, but let's see. But short term, probably not very good. Long term, let's see.